and welcome to lesson 10-9 on volume of pyramids, cones, and spheres. In tonight's lesson, we are going to be able to find the volumes of pyramids and cones, and the second part is finding the volume of spheres. So let's go ahead and get started. So, here's the question for you. If you filled a pyramid, so again, just cone for faces and then a base, with sand, and then pour the contents into a prism, like a rectangular one, that has the same height and the same base, how many times would you need to use a pyramid to fill the entire prism with sand? That is the question here. Alright, so sometimes I've actually done this with classes, but another way to do it is just kind of look at this diagram that we have here. So here's my rectangular prism. Right? And then here are my cones that have the exact same base, and then you see the triangular faces. And it turns out that it takes three times that cone would need to be filled in order to fill up that entire prism. And that's important in tonight's lesson, because when we talk about it, we need to be able to use those cones. So when we talk about how to find the volume of a cone or a pyramid, what you use is this. You do 1/3 because again, it takes 3 different times to fill up a rectangular prism. So because we're doing the area of the base times the height, we're taking 1/3 of that in order to be considered a cone or a pyramid instead of just a prism. So you're going to do 1/3 times the area of the base. Right, whatever the base is, you find the area of that, and times it by the height, then finally times it by that third. So here I have this example. I have a cone, right? And I'm going to go ahead and just take care of that piece. What I always start with, however, is that base. And my base here is a circle. So you go back to how you find the area of the circle. All right? And the way we do that is pi r squared. So I'm going to start with that. So I have my my radius is 2 squared times pi, and I get 4 pi as 4 pi inches squared. Right? And then I can times that. So I have my area of my base. So now I have 1/3 times 4 pi times my height, which is 12. And I can go ahead and simplify that. So, as you notice, I'm waiting to do pi till the end, and that's okay. So I'm going to do 4 times 12 and get 48, and then times it by 1/3, or divide it by half, however you choose to think of it. And I get 16 pi inches squared. Now here, this is the exact, but if they wanted the approximate of it, you'd go ahead and multiply by 3 and 1400. So why don't we go ahead and do that right away. So 16 times 3 and 1400 is 50 and 2400 inches squared. There we go. That's the area of that cone. So now we have this one. And this time it's a square pyramid. It says find the volume of it. So again, you use that same formula. 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So my base here is a square, and the way you find the area of a square is take the length times the width. So 8 inches times 8 inches, and I get 64 inches squared. So now I'm going to go up to my formula. 1/3 times 64 inches squared times the height, which is 12 inches. And I multiply that together. 64 times 12. And then again, times 1/3 or divided by 3, you get 256 inches cubed, because we're talking the volume here. And I think, did I do that? Oops, I made an error on this one. This shouldn't have been squared. This should have been cubed, since it's volume. All right. So that's the first half of the lesson. And again, just something to keep in mind. I'm going to keep flipping back here. If it has a circle base, that's when you're going to end up with the pi in there, because you have the pi r squared. If it's not a circle for a base, you're going to have a whole number like these. You're going to have 256. Or if it's a rectangle, you'd still do length times width, and so on. And times it by the height and divide by 3. That's the first half of the lesson. Now we're going to look at the volume of a sphere. So when we talk about the volume of a sphere is 4/3 times pi r cubed. Right? And again, how we do this, you start with the radius and go through that piece there. All right, so on this one, my radius is 8 inches. We're going to cube it, times it by pi, and then times it also by 4/3. So 8 cubed, so 8 times 8 times 8 is 512 inches cubed. All right, times pi times 4/3. Now here's the thing. You can do this in several different ways. You could do 512 times 4/3 and then times it by 3.14. Or else, if you wanted to, you could times that whole thing by 4, then divide by 3. It's up to you. So here's what I'm doing. I'm putting in 512 times 3/1400. Oops. Let's fix that, shall we? Times 4/3. And I'll see what I get. So 512 times 3/1400 times 4/3 is equal to 2,143 and 6/10 inches cubed. There we go. All right, why don't you go ahead and try this one? How many licks would it take? Well, what you're really doing here is finding the volume, as if this whole sucker was a sphere with nothing in the middle. So if the radius is 5 centimeters, go ahead and find the volume of it. When you're all done, go ahead and check your answers. So go ahead and pause me now. All right, let's do this one, shall we? So again, we have 4/3 pi r cubed. All right, so I put in 5 cubed times 4/3 times pi. And you end up with, well, 125 times 4/3 times pi. And you could just keep going with this. You could do it step by step, which I'm choosing to do this time. So 125 times 4/3, you'd end up with 166 and 2/3 pi centimeters cubed. Now then, but this would be the exact if you left it with pi. To find out what it would be, approximately, we times by 3.14, and I find out the approximate volume is 523 and 3/10 repeating centimeters cubed. There we go. And again, it doesn't really answer that question at the top, how many licks would it take, but we found the volume of it. And here we have this kind of one. Earth has an average radius of 3,963 miles. What is Earth's approximate volume to the nearest millionth of a mile cubed? Assume that Earth is a sphere. So we can go ahead and solve this one. And again, we're going to end up with a big number this time around. So 4/3 pi r cubed. And you'll notice that I keep writing the formula down over and over before I do each problem. This is a personal choice for me because that way it sticks in my head a little bit better. So when I get to a quiz or a test, well, I have the formula down. That's why I choose to do it. So radius, I'm going to put in 3,963. And again, it's miles. So it's going to end up being cubed. So 3,963 cubed. All right. And then again, I could times by 4/3 right away. And then times by 3/1400. And you end up with a number that looks like this. I'm just writing it down. And we get scientific form. So 2.605797132 times 10 to the 11th power. So when they talk about this, they have it in scientific form. And what we could actually do is write it in its actual form. It's to the 11th power, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. So I have there we go. Oops, except I have no idea why. I'm going to try that again. I don't know what I was doing there exactly. So I have 2 and then 6, 0, 5, 7, 9, 7, 1, 3, 2, 0, 0. There we go. So this is a number that I end up with. Now, but they want it to the nearest millionth. So here is a millionth. So looking at it, it would actually be there. That's much better. So that would be the approximate volume of Earth. Very big number. All right. So that is our lesson for tonight. Tonight we talked about how to find the volume of pyramids and cones. And again, how you do that is you find the area of the base, whether the base is a square or a circle, times it by the height, and take a third of that. Because again, a cone or pyramid is half of a prism of the same height and base. And how to find the volume of a sphere by doing 4/3 pi r cubed. Have a terrific night. I will see you tomorrow.